The T-28 Trojan is a versatile single-engine military trainer aircraft designed and built by North American Aviation. First introduced in 1949, the T-28 was used primarily by the United States Air Force and Navy to train their pilots, but it also makes an incredibly fun radio-controlled model. I'm Alex from Hangar 14 RC, and here's everything you need to know before you fly the Arrows RC T-28 Trojan. Before we get into it, if you are at all interested in this airplane, make sure to check the link in the description of this video and use code HANGAR14 for $10 off on it. Now, the Arrows RC T-28 Trojan has been out for a couple of years now, but it seemed to fly a bit under the radar when it comes to the wide selection of T-28 models that are currently out there on the market right now. And I think that's actually a bit unfortunate, since it does come loaded with quite a few features that the others might not have, and at a lower price. This is a 1.1 meter size, meaning that it has an 1100 millimeter or 43.3 inch wingspan with an overall length of 915 millimeters or 36 inches, making it a nice compact model with a decent amount of scale detail to it. It's powered by a 3536 850 kV brushless motor paired with a 40 amp speed control and swings this beautiful 3-blade 10x7 propeller. Now, this is a 6-channel airplane, meaning that we pretty much have everything that you would want, including flaps and retracts. Throughout the plane, you'll find 7 9-gram plastic gear servos that you can find connected and running through a Spectrum AR620 receiver. The recommended battery for this is a 3S 2200 milliamp battery, which gets the job done, but I'll touch on that more in just a little bit. Now, when you get this plane in the mail and unboxed and onto your workbench, you'll notice that there is very little assembly when it comes to this airplane. No glue required here whatsoever, which makes things really nice, really clean, and really easy. Just a few Allen wrenches and a Phillips head screwdriver is really all it takes to put this thing together. Once you find a good place for your receiver, attach the wings and horizontal stabilizers with a few screws, connect your elevator, and you're pretty much all set to go in a matter of really about 30 to 45 minutes. And once assembled, you have an awesome looking RC model of the T-28 Trojan, made out of what feels to be some super dense EPO foam in a unique color scheme with some nice cockpit detail, flaps and retracts, and even a working front gear door, which is honestly really impressive for a model which is a bit on the smaller side, all things considered. So there you have the basic overview of the Arrows RC T-28, but odds are, if you're watching this video right now, you've probably been checking out this plane already and have been looking in to see what other pilots think of it. And if that's the case, you've come to the right place, because after a ton of battery packs burned through this plane now, there are some things that I've noticed since owning and flying this plane for a little bit. The good, the maybe not so good, and some insight you should probably know before picking this thing up for yourself and going out for your first flight with it. Let's start with the good. I always like to start with the good, because in my opinion, there are a lot of good things about this airplane. The first thing I will mention is that it just feels like a solid airplane. And I mean that in a good way, because typically solid or well-constructed airplanes tend to lean a bit on the heavier side of things, but that's really not the case with this plane. And I think that it is just built and designed really well, and just holding it, you can tell. Nothing really flexes or moves at all, and during the assembly, everything went together nice and tight, which I really appreciated. To go with that, I can't stress enough how easy the assembly for this plane was. You can have this thing together in literally no time at all once you get it out of the box. And I really do like the fact that there is no glue required to assemble this plane, as there really shouldn't be. Simple screws is all it takes. Secondly, I think this plane, for the price point that it's at, is a really good bang for your buck when it comes to some of the other planes in this category for a similar price point. For $240, you're getting a 6-channel plug-and-play airplane that has some really good attention to detail to it. You get electric retracts with functioning gear doors and electronics that gives it a great performance in the air. If you compare this, for instance, to the E-flite 1.1 meter T-28, you're getting so much more for that extra $40 that you're spending. It feels like Arrows kind of went above and beyond when it came to some of the details in this plane. The scale features on the cowling in the front here, the awesome 3-bladed propeller, the scale-looking hub that goes with it, a semi-detailed cockpit with our own pilot up here, and some other things just kind of molded into the actual airframe around the plane that it just just add that really nice extra touch of detail. I especially like the fact that it comes with covers for the main landing gear, and it has a working front gear door. I know I mentioned it a couple times now, but it's just a really nice feature. Little things like that you just don't normally find with this size RC plane. And finally, probably the most important good thing about any RC plane is the fact that it actually does fly really good. The power to weight, even with a 3S battery, is more than enough and is capable enough of scale in sport aerobatics with ease. Dropping the flaps, you can really get this thing to slow down, which makes landings an absolute breeze. And while flying this thing, I've really yet to notice any bad tendencies that it might have. I think the important thing here is to fly it like a T-28, all right? It's not meant to do any crazy 3D maneuvers or anything like that. So if you stick to flying it like normal with some basic aerobatics, it's gonna be a great plane for you. Now, there are truly a lot of good things about this T-28, and I really mean that, and I have been enjoying it a ton, but nothing is short of its flaws, all right? Nothing's perfect, so here are just some few things that I think would fall in, I guess, the not so good category. The first thing that I noticed right away was actually the way that the canopy attaches to this plane. You'll notice this little tab on the back of the canopy, which I'm pretty positive is just a piece of packing tape that's folded over on itself and stuck to the back of the canopy. Now, this is the way that you have to pull off the canopy and release it from the magnets, and then get access to your battery and the inside and all that kind of stuff. Now, this works, but it just looks a little cheap in my opinion, and it takes away from all the other incredibly, thought out and scaled details throughout the rest of the plane. And I've already started to notice that it is starting to pull away from the back of the canopy a little bit, so I think it's just a matter of time before I just have to replace it. Now, what I would have loved to see is some sort of just latch or pin to pull back to release that canopy instead. I've seen it in a bunch of other planes that I have. It works great. In my opinion, it's pretty simple and would have worked a little bit better here. Now, second, as much as I love the scale propeller on this thing, you'll notice that it does swing pretty dang low. And if you're lucky enough to have a paved runway at your field or a really smooth surface to fly off of, it really won't be an issue. However, this plane becomes a bit of a lawnmower when flying off of a grass field. Even going out right after the runway was mowed, this propeller will catch and it will cause it to get a little bit squirrely on the ground. Now, I still continue to fly this off of grass, and it is very much possible, but ideally this plane is probably best suited for a smoother surface to fly off of, just so you're not catching that front propeller. Not the end of the world, like I said, because it is still doable. It's just something to keep in mind. And to kind of go along with that, for item number 3, the retracts honestly have held up decently well, but I have started to notice an issue with one of the main landing gears where it's starting to not seat correctly when retracted. I'm sure this is from the dozens of takeoffs and landings on the grass runways and from the grass getting caught on these little main gear door covers here. It seems like one of them has started to bend back slightly, and now I kind of have to push it forward a little bit before flying to make sure that it actually retracts all the way up to where it needs to be. Just like the propeller, these wheel covers sit pretty low and they tend to catch on grass, especially like going over any sort of bumps or anything like that. They get snagged and it pulls that back, and I think that's what's starting to happen. Again, no real fault of the plane here itself, since I'm really using it in a not ideal scenario, which is causing these issues, but I feel like the majority of us do fly off grass most of the time. And like I said, if you are fortunate enough to have a smooth or paved surface to fly off of, you don't really have to worry about it. But again, just something that you should know. Now, with all that said, and dozens of flights on this thing now, there are some things that I've learned and have taken away while flying this plane that I think you should really know before you go and get your hands on this plane for yourself, pick it up, assemble it, and bring it out for the first flight. Number 1, the recommended battery for this plane is a 3S 2200 milliamp LiPo battery. Looking at a lot of other planes in this size with similar electronics, they say 4S capable, except for this one. I could not find a really definitive answer out there whether or not you could put a 4S battery in this airplane, so I kind of just decided to go ahead with it anyway, and I have to say, it's a whole other animal on 4S. This thing scoots with the bigger battery, and it seems to handle it actually really well. Now, I've also gotten some comments on the video where I did this and had some other people say that they've been running a 4S in their plane too, with no issues as well, and they really haven't even thought about going back to a 3S setup. The only thing you'll have to keep in mind is that you're gonna have to trim away just a little bit of the front of this canopy to make room to fit a normal 4S pack. Otherwise, it won't seat correctly and it will probably fly off in the air. Ask me how I know. Now, the performance with the 4S is kind of night and day compared to a 3S, and it really is a ton of fun, and I definitely recommend trying it out. So if you want a little more pep in the step, I'd recommend trying out a 4S battery. Number 2, like I mentioned before, this is an aerobatic capable plane, but it's not an unlimited or 3D aerobatic capable plane. Now, I've watched some other videos of some other pilots flying this thing, and I have seen some complaints about how it doesn't do a certain maneuver well, or that it crashed because it snapped over into a spin that they couldn't get out of. Fly it like a T-28. It's not an Edge 540. You can still have a ton of fun with this thing, flying it the way that it's supposed to be flown. And finally, number 3, you're going to have a blast with this thing. I'm not exaggerating. It is really fun. It really does look fantastic in the air, and it flies like it's on rails, and the addition of the flaps and the retracts adds so much to the plane of this size, as well as making it super easy to fit in the trunk or back seat of your car without having to disassemble it. You're going to want to make sure that you have more than one battery pack for this plane, as it does make you want to keep flying it. If you go out to the field, you burn through one pack, it's just going to make you keep wanting more. This has been my first plane from Arrows RC, but I'm sure that it won't be my last, just with how much this thing has impressed me so far. I've been in this hobby for over 20 years. Now, that's not a joke or exaggerating, I really have. And coming from what used to be available in this hobby when I was just a kid to now, with planes like this for less than $250, it's just incredible. There's also just something about T-28s that make really good RC airplanes, and I've had a few come and go in my collection throughout the years, and I couldn't be more happy to have another one yet again. And the Arrows RC version has been absolutely fantastic so far. So thank you all so much for watching. Hopefully this has helped give you some additional information and insight to what this plane is really all about, and whether or not it will work for you. And if so, make sure to check out the link in the description like I mentioned before, which is where you can find this plane. And if you want to save an extra $10 on it, make sure to use that code HANGER14 during checkout. I'm Alex from Hangar 14 RC. Let me know your thoughts or experiences with this plane down in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you later.